Hello. Hi guys. So, today we'll be talking about strong and weak entities and how they make up so much of the relationship of a database, right? Now, you can ignore the dog barking behind in the background. That's my dog, and maybe he sees something outside we don't know right now, but I don't have any installations in here, but don't worry about it. Okay, ignore that and come to me. So, we'll be talking about strong and weak entities. Okay, a strong entity, as you can see from the word itself, is an entity which is just independent. Okay, which is just independent. For an example, let's take we'll take a basic example for both of them together, right? Let's say employee is a entity that we have. Now the idea is that can this entity be on its own, exist on its own without needing anyone else, right? And obviously, yes, an employee is a person, is a human being, right? It can stand on its own. It's an independent entity. Employee has an EMP ID, let's say an employee ID, right? Which means that it is which might be a primary key, let's say, which means that all the records are dependent on a single primary key. That means it is identified by the primary key. That means it is a strong entity, right? It does not need anyone else's or any other key's attention, any other key's need is there for it to define itself, right? On the other hand, a weak entity is a dependent entity, and literally we'll take that as an example. Now an employee, let's say for insurance or some policies, you can add a dependent in your companies, right? For a way. Now the only way to identify a dependent, for a dependent to exist, let's say you are an employee and you have your mom or your dad or someone with as a dependent, right? Now for an employee dependent to exist, they will need an employee ID always. Without this, the dependent has no existence at all, right? In that way, weak dependent is a weak entity. Now there are only these two important factors about them, to be honest. The simple part is strong entities in an diagram are shown by a rectangle, while weak entities are shown with a double rectangle. Okay, now the relation between them, let's say, is shown by a double rhombus or relationship thing. You can say relationship thing. Now this indicates a total participation. Okay, a total participation, meaning that all that the employee ID that we have over here is completely involved with the dependent table, and this is involved. That's why this dependent can be identified properly, and that's how strong and weak entities work together in any relation. Now one thing is very important to notice over here, that an entity in this kind of relation of strong and weak entities is always for a single relation. It's not for the whole database. Now you cannot say that employee will always be strong. Okay, you cannot say that. For a different scenario, let's say if you have employee and the relation between the employee and the company, right? With the employee and the company, now you need to understand, in this relationship employee is the weak one, right? And company is the strong one, because without a company there cannot be any employee. Without an organization there cannot be an employee working in that organization, right? And the same way you can extend this metaphor all the way up to maybe god or universe, up to you. Companies will be weak in a relationship with, let's say, government, right? That will be uh, weak with country, that will be weak with world government or something like that, right? It can, the metaphor can keep on extending to anything you want, but understand that this kind of relation is only for, is defined for each of the relation between every entity there is. Now dependent is a strong and is a weak entity over here in this relation, right? But in another scenario, let's say you have dependent, and let's say there are some documents of dependent, right? there are some documents or there are some details like that, and which we are storing somewhere else. So in that way, the documents can only exist when there is a dependent involved, right? Only with the dependent ID the documents can be identified. That means this entity would be weak and dependent would be strong in this relationship. So that kind of thing is easy to understand, right? In any relation that you see. Now you can think of maybe a tree, right? Maybe you can think of a tree. Okay, the branch or the tree stem, everything is strong because they are independent of the leaves, right? And while the leaf and everything are weak because they are dependent, they need a branch, they need a stem to grow on, otherwise they have no meaning, they won't have any existence. In that same way, it will be for all the relations in the world. Even in the world itself, even in real life, you can see that a partner is strong, another partner is weak, a partner is dominant, another is submissive, and people follow each other out, right? The weak entity will always be dependent on the strong entity. And that's it for the video, guys. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any ways for me to change how I'm doing this thing, let me know, and I'll be happy to comment. I'll happy to answer all your questions. Thank you for your time.